the last of it yet. We have Jamie Stern Weiner. Are you with us, Jamie? He's done a lot of work on the question of the IHRA misdefinition of anti-Semitism. So we're very pleased to have you with us. Welcome.
Thanks, Tina. Okay, so I want to use my 10 minutes here to just help clarify what I think are the principles at stake in the fight over the IHRA working definition. The definition supporters say it's just a tool to help with consistent data collection, or it's just a symbolic commitment, that it poses no danger to free speech, and that it has nothing whatsoever to do with defending Israel from legitimate criticism. It must just be a coincidence then that debate over the IHRA definition in multiple countries has consistently pit supporters of Israel on the one side against progressive Jewish groups, Palestine solidarity activists, and civil liberties campaigners on the other. It must all just be a giant misunderstanding. Well, to dispel this confusion and mystification, help clear the way for a debate about the principles that truly are at stake, I want to make 3 points about the definition's genesis and applications to date. First, the definition is a pro-Israel initiative. It was drafted and negotiated in 2004 by a handful of mainly pro-Israel groups led by the American Jewish Committee. Its adoption by the IHRA in 2016 was engineered by the Simon Wiesenthal Center. Let's just focus on the Simon Wiesenthal Center for now. So this is an organization which engages in blanket pro-Israel advocacy of the crudest kind, in the course of which it routinely conflates legitimate, accurate criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. So just to give a flavor, it described EU guidelines which prohibit funding institutions located in Israel's illegal settlements as, quote, redolent of the 1930s Nazi boycott of the Jews throughout the Reich, which was the prelude to the Holocaust. And just recently, when the pre-trial chamber of the International Criminal Court ruled that it had jurisdiction in Palestine, the Simon Wiesenthal Center accused it of, quote, anti-Semitism and of trying to, quote, punish Jews for defending themselves from those committed to finish Hitler's genocidal goals. So the working definition, it's a vehicle for investing such designations with political, regulatory, and ultimately legal authority. Second point, there are actually 2 IHRA working definitions. The first refers to a 2-sentence passage. I'm sure you're all familiar with it, but I'll just quote it for those who aren't. Anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred toward Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed toward Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and or their property, toward Jewish community institutions and religious facilities. Let's call this, for our purposes, the meaningless definition. The second IHRA working definition comprises a list of 11 examples of purported anti-Semitic statements, of which 7 make reference to Israel. These include such criteria as denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination and applying double standards to it. Let's call this list of examples Israel's definition. What's important to bear in mind is that Israel's advocates and the leading advocates of the working definition, they couldn't care less about the meaningless definition. After all, it's meaningless. Supporters of the IHRA working definition have themselves dismissed that 2-sentence passage as very generalist and vague, that's the campaign against anti-Semitism, or even totally muted and unmoored from any current reality, that's the Simon Wiesenthal Center. Meanwhile, Israeli officials say that, quote, what turns the IHRA definition into an essential definition in our eyes is the list of examples. That's why they won't drop the most obviously political and indefensible examples, double standards, self-determination. Rightly or wrongly, in my view wrongly, dropping those would at one stroke neutralize most of the public criticism of the working definition. It would also plainly serve the claimed purpose of that definition, namely to provide a clear and consistent standard for data collectors. But they won't drop them. Why not? Because those are the examples that can be most easily used against Israel's critics. It might be wondered, why did the IHRA itself adopt Israel's definition, even as it manifestly threatens the free speech of critics of Israel? Well, the interesting answer is it didn't. The IHRA's decision-making body, in fact, excluded the 11 examples from its working definition, which comprised the meaningless definition only. This fact has subsequently been misrepresented by Israel's advocates, certain UK officials, and regrettably by elements of the IHRA itself, but it's easily documented and it soon will be. Third point, in practice, pro-Israel campaigners have used the definition to chill speech. So it's repeatedly claimed that the definition is not intended as a tool for censorship, but its champions have also repeatedly insisted that it be used as such. Most obviously, it was demanded that Labour incorporate Israel's definition into its code of conduct. There's an ongoing international campaign pressing social media platforms to use it to censor posts, and the UK government, backed by mainstream Jewish organizations, is seeking to impose it on universities. What's more, in practice, it has been repeatedly used, not just to stigmatize, but also to stifle speech. We just heard a few examples from university campuses. Consider now the Labour Party. In summer 2018, pro-Israel groups demanded that Labour adopt the IHRA working definition and all the IHRA's examples verbatim, which is to say, in our terms, Israel's definition. Labour's attempt to only adopt most of those examples, rejecting or adapting others, was condemned as proof positive that it had an anti-Semitism problem. Everyone from the Board of Deputies to the Community Security Trust to government ministers insisted that, to use the words of a joint statement by 7 UK delegates to the IHRA, quote, any modified version of the IHRA definition that does not include all of its 11 examples is no longer the IHRA definition. Now, this was flatly false, as noted, but it worked as Labour's ruling body capitulated and adopted Israel's definition. So how's it being used? Consider one recent case. In a historic development, Israel's leading human rights organization, B'Tselem, recently found that Israel oversees a regime of Jewish supremacy from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea that amounts to apartheid. A Labour member recently submitted a motion to their branch supporting B'Tselem's position and calling for an end to the apartheid regime. But the chair said that it should not be put on the agenda, it was out of order, because the references to apartheid can be read as characterizing Israel as a racist endeavor, and this is contrary to the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. The chair's position was supported by regional officers. In other words, we've now reached the juncture where supporting Israel's leading human rights organization is prohibited and suppressed within the Labour Party as anti-Semitic. The crucial point is not just that Israel's definition facilitates such outrages, but that its most consequential supporters either do not object to or actively encourage this assault on free speech. When one British university cancelled a student event planned as part of Israel Apartheid Week, the Simon Wiesenthal Center, recall the architect of the IHRA definition, praised the move and urged other universities to follow suit. The Simon Wiesenthal Center has openly boasted about the definition's contribution to, quote, legislation condemning anti-Zionism and BDS, and recalled with satisfaction how, quote, in the United Kingdom, the IHRA definition helped to clearly expose Jeremy Corbyn and Labour's patterns of anti-Semitism and provoked a controversy that contributed to Corbyn's landslide defeat. A controversy that, to repeat, was based on a falsehood, one that was propagated most authoritatively by the pro-Israel supporters of the IHRA definition. To conclude then, we can and should confidently set aside the mystification around what the definition's purpose and practical effect is. It was drafted by pro-Israel groups as a vehicle through which to stigmatize and stifle criticism of Israel. All supporters of free speech should oppose it, not just in terms of Palestine, but as a matter of principle in those terms. Thanks.
Thanks, Gina.
Oh, sorry, comrades, I was muted and chattering away there. Apologies for running quite so late. And thank you very much, Jamie, for this very useful overview of what's wrong with the IHRA. And we'll certainly can take that as a little video clip that we will put on our new website. So it's been an excellent overview. Apologies, comrades, for running quite so late. I'm sure you've noticed we're not sticking to the agenda. I apologize, but it's been a really useful conference so far. There's one more comrade who was previously just indicated, and we've asked her to speak as well, which was Esther Giles. We've introduced her earlier on, she was no platformed on Sunday from the Stop the Labour lockout rally over her apparent views on trans rights or not. But I think it's important that we show that we do not no platform and call not for no platforms of fellow socialists in particular. So welcome, Esther. If you could stick to 3-4 minutes, that would be fantastic. Hi.
Thank you very much. I'm very humbled and honoured to be here today. Thank you very much for having me at your conference. I'm going to talk to you about no platforming and the so-called left's supposed right of intolerance, linking to my experiences last week. I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. This quote, wrongly attributed to Voltaire, was actually written by, would you believe it, a woman, Beatrice Evelyn Hall, in a book published in 1906 in which she wrote about Voltaire, and who of course wrote under a pseudonym because she was a woman. And yes, I have met people who will not read anything written by a woman. Here's something that Voltaire did once write in his 1763 treatise on toleration. The supposed right of intolerance is absurd and barbaric. It is the right of the tiger. Nay, it is far worse. The tigers do but tear in order to have food, while we rend each other for paragraphs. So I'm going to talk to you about my recent no platform experience and the fallout from it, why we must fight for free speech and thought, and the new no platforming. Last Sunday evening, there was an event about democracy and free speech. This event was put on in defence of CLP officers suspended for disobeying the diktats of the General Secretary by allowing members to debate and or vote on topics he had forbidden. The organisers of this event no platformed somebody, me, because someone had lobbied one or more of the speakers. One of the speakers, who is a prospective candidate for Mayor of Liverpool, told the organisers that they would withdraw unless I was removed from the platform. The organisers feared that her withdrawal would spark further speakers pulling out and asked me to withdraw for fear of the whole event collapsing. I pulled out. The event went ahead using a webinar with the chat disabled. The organising group knew that their decision to no platform one of the advertised speakers would be a controversial one and seen as hypocritical. But they felt either that the event was more important than the principle of free speech, or that what I was accused of genuinely made me a persona non grata. I think that the organising committee was divided on the issue. It has certainly, in the fallout, revealed deep rifts in groups and campaigns. Importantly, when this happens to you, you'll find out how people and groups respond to the white hot flame of the witch hunt. Some melt away like snowflakes, some swivel round and stand by the side of the witch hunters, some run for cover, and some stand in the flames by your side, including people you have never met before, and become an even more valuable gold. I want to put this no platforming in the context of free speech and explore what no platforming has now become. So what does free speech do? We've talked about this a lot already today. It shines a light on bad arguments and hate, rather than letting it fester in dark corners. Free speech allows debate where there is disagreement about ideas and ideologies. It helps us to find the truth by dialectic. It promotes trust, honesty and respect where differing points of view are listened to. And I think we've seen some of that today. It requires confidence to challenge and that the challenge is respectful. It requires time to think and to debate. That's why in the Labour Party, for those of us who still have meetings or are allowed to go to them, we have the process of motions submitted in good time and time allotted for debate in a comradely fashion. The ability to debate competing views is one of the foundations of democratic society. If dissent is seen as offence and then is elevated to hate speech, The consequences for democracy are alarming, and that is what I think we are seeing now. So what are the limits of free speech? Again, we've discussed this today. It should not, in my view, promote acts of violence. If somebody says something a reasonable person would believe to be something so appalling that it should not be said, they should be called out. We should refuse and reject the rhetoric of violence. Yesterday, somebody who has been posting smears against me on social media for the past 2 years justified their smearing and my no platforming by saying, you are standing with people who really have been unfairly smeared and are completely innocent of all accusations. This person was saying that they were the arbiter of free speech and that with anybody with whom they disagreed should be silenced. So if we move on to the new no platforming used to be a tactic used against self-proclaimed fascists, the National Front, or the EGL, and Holocaust deniers. But today, it is particularly being used to prevent the expression of feminist arguments critical of the sex industry and of some demands made by trans activists. The feminists who hold these views, mainly second-wave feminists and other sisters and brothers, have never advocated or engaged in violence against any group of people. But they are called transphobes, they are called warphobes. It is argued that the mere presence of anyone said to hold these views is a threat to a protected minority group's safety. And so comrades are prevented from speaking by the opinions of the ideological thugs. In my case, it seems to have been the LGBT plus group, though I cannot be sure. And we know, of course, that critics of Israel suffer the same fate, as we've already discussed today. As somebody said to me this week, attacks on free speech and thought about Israel come from without, but the gender debate results in the left eating itself. This new no platforming approach results in people sometimes being disgraced and defamed for the rest of their lives for one comment or incident taken out of context, or even for just having been accused of something. Universities appear to be a mecca for no platformers, which doesn't augur well for the future if we don't address it now. The social justice warriors in today's universities seem to wage war to outcompete each other in their successes in no platforming people. There's a growing list of people who've been no platformed, and we're hearing about some of them today, including Ken Loach this week. So with Ken Loach, people called for his no platforming because he had repeatedly been accused of and been an apologist for anti-Semitism. Did you see what they did there? They said he should be no platform because he had been accused of something, and the event had nothing to do with what he was being accused of. This is another feature of the new no platforming. Anyway, the college did stand firm and say that no platforming is not the way to pursue the goals of a free and open academic community. And the event did go ahead. Again at Oxford University this week, John McDonnell has been urged by the Labour Society not to share a platform with a woman they call a known transphobe, Professor Selina Todd, who writes and teaches about class, inequality, working class history, feminism, and women's lives. The attackers say the content of the event is irrelevant to the issue at hand, namely that McDonnell is lending his social and political capital to a person whose views actively harm the trans community. As one of the Twitter comments say, I thought universities were about debate, not censorship. So the defamation escalates. First you call somebody a transphobe, then next time you can call them a known transphobe. Next, then you call them, once you call them a known transphobe, you become a notorious transphobe, all without saying a single word, and just because your attackers say it again and again and again. So individuals are being no platformed, not because of what they actually say, but because of what people think they think, because they are not ideologically pure according to a particular group with influence, and at the same time other people are blackmailed into withdrawing or requiring withdrawal of the heretic for fear of guilt by association and worse. So
Comrade, can you start winding up? Sorry.
Yes, in conclusion, then what does it mean? It means that we allow them to, those groups with influence control the narrative. They control what people say, and this begins to control what people think. It means that people walk and think in fear that they might say something that would damage them for the rest of their lives. It means that ideas cannot be debated in public. These ideas now include Palestine, Israel as an apartheid state, women's rights. Has anyone ever been no platform for wanting to debate trans rights? Class analysis, talk about identity politics as much as you like. It means that people are not allowed to think and have a say unless within the agreed political narrative. It means that democracy dies. And remember, first they came for the TERFs, then the so-called anti-Semites, and then they will come for you. Free speech and democracy for all. Solidarity.
Thank you, Esther. This is clearly a discussion that is hotly disputed in the Labour Party and in the Labour movement, actually, across all organizations on the left. And you're quite rightly saying it's tearing some organizations apart, actually, which is horrible. And it's very, I think it's very much linked to the ID politics and going down that road rather than looking for working class politics. It's people splitting up in smaller and smaller groups. But it's very important that we hear a debate, and the Labour Left Alliance, which I'm involved in, has been discussing putting on a debate, but we're a little bit fearful on it because the debate has become so toxic on both sides, which is a huge shame because both sides have very valid arguments, I think, and we're still trying to work out how a debate like this could be organized in a comradely fashion that hears everybody and does not no platform. And I think that's what we agree on, all of us, isn't it? No view on this matter should be no platform. And if one of them is particularly wrong, let's hear it, let's debate it, let's vote it down, and let's show why it's wrong. But to no platform, a comrade like Esther or other feminist activists is absolutely the wrong way to go, especially because it's tearing our organizations apart. So thank you very much for joining us, comrades. Okay, we're having, we know we're running really late, comrades. I'm wondering if we could move to the vote on this charter, or if comrades want to discuss this a bit more, because it is an important issue. All sorts of important issues have been raised, but I'm a bit worried about time. We've got Norman Finkelstein in the audience, Samia Ramadani, who was scheduled to speak now. I hope they can stay with us a little while longer. Okay, we have two comrades raised their hands. Let's hear them, because we don't want to shut down debate in this conference. That would be a wrong thing to do. Okay, Norman, I think, wants to speak first, and then David Evans. But I'm asking comrades to keep it to like about 2 minutes if you can. Can you see?
Yep, there we are. That's it. It takes me 2 minutes to unmute myself. Thanks very much. Yes, I'm Norman Thomas. I'm the suspended chair of South Thanet. I'm very proud to be, along with Esther Giles, one of the founding members of Labour in Exile Network. I don't know, the ups and downs of the debate that Esther has been involved with regarding trans rights. What I do know is that it is something that needs debating, and I hope the debate will be organised. But what I also feel is that this debate shouldn't be introduced into organisations that are trying to do something very different from the debate itself. That basically, Labour in Exile Network is trying to change the Labour Party into a place where free speech is allowed, where CLPs will be allowed to speak about whatever they want to speak about, including trans rights. So we're fighting for that. It's absolutely counterproductive and destructive to try to distract that organisation by people coming in talking about another issue. We're getting that on our social media site. People who are pursuing Esther come onto our social media site and start a huge debate about that. But that is not what we are trying to do. That is a debate for another time. You've got to have some kind of organisation, some sort of structure in what you do, or nothing ever gets done. So we're having a conference on February 27th. Come to that, to the Labour in Exile Network conference. It's on the network. You can find the website very easily. But that's what we want to do, is to change the Labour Party into a place where free speech is allowed. Getting distracted into huge debates about something else is not what we're about. That's for another time, another organisation, maybe tomorrow, but let's do it then. But please, please, let's not be distracted all the time by other things. Thanks.
Thank you, Comrade. Anita, please. 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. I'd like to say a little bit, tiny bit, what I can fit in about what's been going on in Bristol. I would say without a doubt that Bristol is in the front line of the fight for full freedom of speech. And Esther in particular has been hit from the right and from the so-called left. But what we are discovering, I'm an investigative journalist and I'm looking much more into this. What we are discovering is that the trans women or women supporters are being recruited by the right wing, and you can see that if anybody wants details and what's happened to Esther with Darren Jones. Sorry, a bit interrupting. Unmute themselves, please. So I'd also like to just say that last 2 nights ago, the largest CLP in the country, Bristol West, held the most suspect ever AGM that I have ever experienced in my life. I ran on a one-woman ticket to be the disability officer. Some of you might remember that it was also the learning disabled who were targeted under the Third Reich. I wasn't allowed to be accepted by the so-called Thangam, that is the Keir Starmer slate, nor was I welcomed by the so-called left slate. And I was told that I wouldn't be accepted because I am gender critical. I've never even discussed it with any of them. However, as Esther said so rightly, all you need to do is have guilt by association. And so I think that this is very much intertwined. And in a certain way, if people here are brave enough to really listen to what Esther is saying and what we have been going through for 3-4 years in Bristol, I mean, I think that maybe we could have a different way of going. Anyway, we don't know whether or not the Bristol West AGM is going to be invalidated, but it came from on high. It came from David Evans. We weren't allowed to speak. It was a webinar just like last week. So they learned from Esther's experience last week, no chat, no nothing, simply a voting machine. It was so bad that the MP Thangam Debonair wasn't able to find her vote, but they got their way. They won their slate with 100 votes missing and vote rigging. Hopefully this is going to come out in the papers. I'm working on a local paper and hopefully it's going to go into the private eye. But if anybody has any doubts about what women particularly have been through in this city, just talk to us. We're really willing to.
Thank you, Comrade. We're now coming to the end of this. And Kevin, I'm giving Kevin the chance for a right of reply. Please, Kevin, are you there? Kevin? Is he there?
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to, yes, I'm here. I'll just move it formally.
Okay, that makes life easier. Yes, thank you. Okay, comrades, I know that people have problems with the hand issue, raising hands, etc. So we're just quickly going to do, yes, I'm going to do another poll for voting on the last amendment by Tony Greenstein. I don't think we need a right of reply from Tony. Sorry, Tony. And he's shaking his head anyway. Okay, and it's sorry, it's done it both at the same time. So, oh, it can't, can we? We have to. Sorry, I have to end this poll. This makes no sense. We have to have the separate. We have to have these motions separately. These questions. Sorry. Actually, can comrades? Is everybody able to raise their hand? Can most comrades raise their hand? Because I'm not sure, I don't think there's anything controversial in this. It's going to take me 5 minutes to draw up another poll. So I suggest we're just going to vote with a hand up. Yes, okay, thank you, comrades, for raising it. So we're voting on Tony's amendment or not. If you want this to go forward into the charter, I'm quickly going to share my screen so you can see what I'm talking about. I think this is here. Right, okay. So this is Tony's amendment here. Add at the end, the libel courts are inaccessible to the poor and those without means. They are a playground for the rich. At the end of point 6 in our charter. Okay, comrades, I'm going to stop my screen, otherwise I can't really see you voting properly. So everybody who's in favor of this, please raise your hand. And then I'm going to ask those who are against it to raise their hand afterwards. Okay, I can see some people raise their hands, some do the thumbs up, some do the clapping. I guess you can't find the other issues here. Okay, so there's a number of voting methods being used, but I can see them all, so it's not a problem. Okay, don't vote no at the moment. We're going to get to that later. Okay, so we have, just quickly add them up, 81 in favor of Tony's. I'm going to clear it all. Okay, could comrades now indicate if they're against it? If they're against this amendment from Tony, vote now. If you're against it, raise your hand or do the thumbs up button or click the no button. I can see you. Okay, so that's 8 against, so that is clearly carried. I'm going to clear this all. Could comrades now please vote for the charter as amended? I'm going to say with the proviso that the steering committee has to look into sorting out the slightly contradictory 2 amendments we agreed on earlier. That's just how it is. Could you please raise your hand if you are in favor of the charter as amended by all 3 amendments? They have all gone through. What about abstentions? I'm really sorry, I forgot about the abstentions, but I'll do this in this session, not in this one. Sorry, comrades. Okay, if you're in favor of the charter as amended, we've got 83, 84 in favor. Okay, I'm going to clear now. If you are, hold on a second, if you're against the charter as amended, please vote now. Okay, we have 4, 3, 2, it's going down, that's funny. Okay, the vote against the charter is going down. We've got two against. This is not an ideal way to vote, no doubt, but it's just how it is. Thank you, comrades. And any abstentions? If you could raise your hand if you want to abstain. So that's 2 abstentions. Thank you very much, comrade. We had comrades Norman Finkelstein and Sami Ramadani scheduled to speak about 10 minutes ago. I'm just going to ask them both if they're okay waiting until after a 10-minute break or if they want to speak now. Sami, if you could quickly ask you to unmute yourself. Sami is doing the thumbs up. I think
that's fine. Yeah, that's okay.
You can wait till after the.
That's fine.
That's great. Thank you. Norman, are you okay to wait till after a 10-minute break? Otherwise, we'll bring you in now.
I'm fine with whatever works for you. I would prefer, however, to speak now because I think it's late in your conference and many people will take advantage of the 10-minute break to take off. So
okay, we can bring you in now if you want, and then we have a 10-minute break.
Actually, yes? As I said, I will leave the decision to you. But in terms of trying to reach a bigger audience, I think since it's so late in your conference, people will take off now and not return.
They might return because you're speaking.
Yeah. People get tired.
They do get tired. Okay. Well, I'll say then we hear from you now, if that's okay with you, unless you need a few minute break, or but if you're okay to speak, then
I'm personally fine, and whatever you decide is okay with me.
Okay. Well, we bring Norman in now, and then Sami after the break. So there's another reason to join us, another good reason to join us after the session. So yes, thank you very much, Norman, for joining us. It's an honor that you're with us. 10 minutes, if you can manage that, on the question of free speech. And we would also love to hear what you think about perhaps our campaign and how it can go forward.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I didn't hear as much as I probably should have, but what I did hear actually I found very substantive. And in particular, the last speaker, I found it informative. I wasn't aware of the extent to which the transgender debate is causing internecine conflict. And I actually would like to get a copy of her intervention, which I can pass around to some friends of mine, because I happen to agree with her on this particular issue, but she articulated it with more urgency than I have been able to. I had a lot of trouble figuring out what to speak on today, because I was originally going to do my usual exhortation based on John Stuart Mill's On Liberty and Bertrand Russell's writings on freedom of speech. And I was pretty psyched up for doing it, but for some reason I couldn't get myself to sit down and speak to that topic, maybe because I've said it so many times. And then I realized there was actually something I've been researching lately that was much more, I think, interesting at this point. Namely, I was curious to see how the classical thinkers dealt with the issue of racism. When I say classical thinkers, I mean in particular W.E.B. Du Bois. Du Bois was the leading African-American scholar on the subject of race and racism for the duration of the 20th century. Literally, he was born just after the Civil War, and he passed in 1963, the night before the March on Washington. And for the whole of his life, which lasted fully 95 years, he was by far and away the most articulate, the most courageous speaker on the issue of racism. He was African-American, I guess I should point out. And he left behind a quite voluminous scholarly corpus. And I've been lately looking at it, curious, where does he stand on the issue of discussing race, discussing racism, censorship, and so forth? And what was really striking to me was he was not just a scholar. He was brilliant, no question about it, but he was an activist. He was the founder of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP. He was then the editor of their premier publication called The Crisis for 20 years. The Crisis had a circulation of 100,000, which was extraordinary for that period in time. And he was a real militant. He was a real militant. At the end of his life, he joined the Communist Party. He got arrested. He was manacled. He went through trial for a year. And he won the trial, and he ended up leaving the country. He went to live in Ghana at the end of his life. So we're not talking about a cloistered scholar. We're talking about a serious intellectual in search of truth, and we're also talking about a real political activist. So how does he deal with the question of race and racism? I was curious. First of all, the thing that's most striking about Du Bois is there are no taboos. There are no labels. There's nobody, he's not calling anybody a racist. He's not calling anybody a fascist. He's not calling for anybody to be deplatformed. He's not calling for anybody to be silenced. He sits down in his study and he patiently looks through the evidence. What does the evidence show? So when he has to address the issue of race, he says, it is generally recognized today that no scientific definition of race is possible. Of the psychological and mental differences which exist between individuals and groups, we have as yet only tentative measurements and limited studies. These are not sufficient to divide mankind into definite groups, nor to indicate the connection between physical and mental traits. I know it sounds a little boring to read it over Zoom, but in my opinion, it's important to listen to the language. He's talking about the racial inheritance of intelligence. That's a very hot topic. Are Black people genetically inferior to white people when it comes to intelligence? Does he say, this is outrageous, this is fascist, this is Nazism? Does he say that? No. He says very calmly, we have as yet only tentative measurements and limited studies. These are not sufficient to divide mankind into definite groups. You calmly, composed, look at the evidence. You don't run from it. You don't fear it. You don't try to suppress, to deplatform what you don't agree with. Then he has to look at the question of all these intelligence tests that purport to prove white people are superior to Black people. He goes through all the evidence, step by step by step, and says, it's not convincing. If you look at the evidence, it doesn't persuade. He doesn't say, this is an outrage, this has to be suppressed, we can't talk about it, this is fascism. No. And he makes along the way, in my opinion, quite interesting observations. He says, for example, the fundamental and logical difficulty with all racial comparison is that there is no way of determining just what a race is. What is a race? Before you can say the Black race is genetically inferior to the white race, what is a race? And he says there's just no scientific way of reaching a consensus on that basic question. Once again, to emphasize, not to suppress, not to silence, not to deplatform, not to run and hide, but to confront the issues and try patiently to parse the evidence and see where matters stand. And even to say, even if the evidence today shows no racial difference, he says, that's still tentative. Our knowledge is still limited. We still don't have a final answer on the question. What is racism? Everybody here, or not everybody, permit me to take that back. A large number of people here in your forum, they're clear on what racism is. We have the deplatform racists, we have the silence racists, but you have a basic question. What is racism? Du Bois spent the whole of his life trying to figure out that question. He started out in 1900 thinking, well, racism is about ignorance. If I can show the world the truth, we can get rid of racism. Then he starts reading Marx, and he comes to the conclusion, no, racism is more than about ignorance. He says, if you look at when racism began in the modern era, he says it begins in the first third of the 19th century to justify the slave trade and to justify slavery. He says it's about profits. But then he says, hey, we have a problem here. White and Black workers, they don't get along. In fact, the poor whites hate nobody more than Black people. So he says, we have a problem. Why is it if racism is just about capitalist profits, white and Black workers don't get along, they don't unite? And he says, well, That's a complicated question. First, he says there's a natural human propensity to monopoly. White people want to monopolize the best jobs. So they don't want competition for black people. But then he says there's another problem. Black people are accustomed to lower wages than white workers. So black people tend to bid down wages. And so we have to keep them out of our jobs. But then he says there's a third problem. He calls it the psychic wage. White workers want to feel better than somebody. They have the desire to feel better. So they would rather get lower wages if it means black people will be below them. He calls it the psychic wage of capitalism, or the psychic wage of the working class. Then later in his life, he comes under the influence of Freud. And he says, you know what? We have to acknowledge it. There is a large amount of racism that's completely irrational. It's deep in our psyche, buried deep in our psyche, and it has no rational basis. For example, what he calls the racial sex jealousy. All of the lynchings that are occurring in the South based on the claim that black men are rapists and will rape our white women. And that whole racial sex jealousy, he says, it's not rational. It's deep in our psyche, deep in what he calls our folklore. The point being, the fight against racism is very complex. It's not an easy, just get rid of the ruling class, get rid of capitalism, and we'll abolish racism. No, it has many components. It's multivalent. In order to rationally try to address this topic of racism, you have to have full, frequent, and fearless debate. Now, there was one occasion in his lifetime of 95 years when he advocated censorship. One. The occasion was the birth of the modern film industry. The modern film industry is usually dated, its birth, with this film called Birth of a Nation. And Birth of a Nation was a very sophisticated, for its time, a very sophisticated technical achievement for cinema. It was also, the theme was racism. It was white people trying to protect themselves from rapist black men. And Du Bois said, we have a problem here. Number one, this film is technically very sophisticated. We black people, we don't have the financial resources or the technical competence to fight this film. And number two, he said, this film is directly causing a large number of lynchings of black people. He says you could just look at the numbers. The numbers are going through the roof because of this film. And he said in this one single exception, I think we should fight for censorship. Now, he recognized he came into conflict with a lot of his friends over this. I would want to make 2 points. Number one, in his 95 years, this was the one single exception he made. He writes about it in his autobiographies. I recognize I made one exception here. It was the one single exception he made. And number two, I'm fully willing to acknowledge it was a complex issue for the reasons he laid out. And in fact, just in a personal note, I had an essay contest on my website. How would you answer Du Bois's arguments? I thought they were tough. They were tough, but it was one case. Otherwise, I'll leave off with one thing he said. In his most famous book, Black Reconstruction, He tries to address the question, why couldn't the South look forward, look to the future, not look backwards after the Civil War, and try to resolve this issue of race? And he said the reason the South was unable to do it was because of censorship. And I'll read, it's just a very brief paragraph. I'll just leave off there. He says, he's talking about after the Civil War, what's called the period of Reconstruction. Why was there no support for a forward-looking policy in the South among poor whites, among the white working class? He writes, in the South, there was absence of any leadership corresponding in breadth and courage to that of Abraham Lincoln. Here comes the penalty which a land pays when it stifles free speech and free discussion and turns itself over entirely to propaganda. He says, it does not make any difference at the time if the things you advocate are absolutely right. What Tony Greenstein, what David Miller advocate, they may be absolutely right. He says it does not make any difference if what you advocate is absolutely right. He says the nation nonetheless becomes morally emasculated and mentally hogtied and cannot evolve that healthy difference of opinion which leads to the discovery of truth under changing conditions. The healthy difference of opinion which leads to the discovery of truth under changing conditions. Conditions change. You have to constantly examine, probe, rethink your certainties and your certitudes. Otherwise, your country gets, or your political party gets morally emasculated and mentally hogtied. And that to me should be the lesson for all of us, that if we want to progress, we want to keep in step with the times as time unfolds, we have to be open always to hearing every point of view, however distasteful. Do you know how distasteful it was for W.E.B. Du Bois, who studied at Harvard, got his PhD from Harvard, studied at the University of Berlin, one of the leading intellectuals at the time? He has to deal with white people telling him, but you're intellectually inferior, you're mentally inferior. Look at the IQ tests, look at these tests. He had to deal with that every day of his life. And believe me, you could see he says it out loud. I didn't like it. I didn't like it. But he didn't run. He didn't hide. He didn't cower. He didn't take out the truncheon, the club, to try to silence his critics. He sat down, looked at the evidence, and waited to see where truth transported him. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, comrade. I knew it was worthwhile inviting you, comrade. I think I'm much more with you on that issue than I am with Tony Greenstein. But thank you very much for your contribution. Definitely worthwhile looking at W.E.B. Du Bois. That's definitely something we could look into. And I agree with much what you said. Rethinking our certainties. Sometimes, if, for example, fascist, racist ideas become popular in the working class, of course we should debate them and should lay out why they are so destructive and what's wrong with it, rather than say this is not an issue that should be debated. We need to show what's wrong with it. Quite right. I think you made an excellent contribution for that. I'm so sorry, comrades, for running quite so late. I think it's been a really excellent first half, well, first two-thirds of the conference, we're going to have to tighten up the second part a little bit. We're suggesting by cutting down the time on moving motions. Most of them are quite uncontroversial. Comrades, we have a 10-minute break, I suggest. Seeing you again at 5:25.
Okay, comrades, I think we're now ready to begin. I'm chairing the second half, probably the last third of the conference, and just remind you of the format from the schedule. We'll have Sami Ramadani will do a brief introduction to the session, and then we'll move into motions. We've had 7 motions that have been submitted in advance. And I'd like the movers of the motions, please, if they could, to keep their moving speeches to 3 minutes. And then we'll throw it open to general debate. And then I'll allow comrades to come back in to do a closing set of speeches and replies. And we will then take the votes in sequence. So there'll be a general discussion after all of them have been moved, and then we'll take contributions and then the vote. The last section will be elections to the steering group, and comrades there can nominate themselves or indeed be nominated by somebody else. We've got up to 9 places proposed. And we'll be taking the vote by a Zoom poll, no single transferable vote on this occasion. Everybody has up to 9 votes. If they want to use them, and then the comrades with the 9 highest votes, 9 comrades with the highest votes will be returned, will be elected. Okay, then. So that's the running order. I hope it's reasonably clear. Oh, I see Norman Finkelstein's already received a nomination. Okay. So, comrades, I'd like to call now Sami Ramadani to introduce the session. Is Sami there? Hi, Sami.
Hi. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks. And thanks for the invitation to address the conference. It's been really good. I learned quite a lot from the speakers and the contributions, and I think it was a good debate as well, although time was always pressing. And if you don't mind, I might get the chance to comment on the debate about free speech, whether we should ban speakers of certain opinions or not. Something that Norma Finkelstein was talking about. But I would like to start by stressing the international implications of the anti-Semitism campaign that was kick-started inside the Labour Party, which eventually led to the removal of Jeremy Corbyn as party leader following the elections. The international implications are quite important because what the silencing of the critics of Israel is going to lead to, if successful, would be to silence any sympathies for the Palestinian people. Because critics of Israel usually refer to the oppression of the Palestinians. And silencing critics of Israel is one of the broader aims of the campaign to silence the left, socialists, critics of Israel in general, and the targeting of anti-Zionist and non-Zionist Jews is a very significant feature of the campaign, whereby Israel understands and the leading Zionist organizations understand quite well, and have learned from history that critics of an imperialist policy or of a policy of expansion, critics that belong to that country that practices such racist or expansionist or warlike policies, internal critics are extremely important for any just cause. And Jews who are prepared to declare their anti-Zionism or strong criticism of Israel are seen to be very dangerous by the Zionists, by Israel. So that's on the one hand. On the other, there is even broader reason why this campaign to silence the critics of Israel has been latched upon by ruling classes, especially in the imperialist countries like Britain, like the United States. They latched onto it because they can see that criticisms of Israel is championed by the left, by socialists, by people who call for social justice for the Palestinians. Therefore, to stress and to silence critics of Israel has a twofold character. One is to silence criticism of Israel in general, Israel being a close ally of imperialist countries. But secondly, it helps to silence the left and socialists and prevents international solidarity. Because once you accuse somebody of being anti-Semitic, you're saying they are racist. Therefore, they will be silenced automatically because there is a policy of not allowing racists to express their views. So this is quite significant, and it has to be borne in mind that this campaign for free speech is very critical in terms of its implications, extremely important. And coupled with that attempt to silence, if you like, the voices of justice, is to call people who criticize Israel or criticize Zionism as being extremists. And the label extremists is usually being brought forward to attach it to critics of Israel. Because before this campaign about anti-Semitism kicked off in the Labour Party, the label extremist was used to silence critics. And to combine it with the anti-Semitism label, it has become quite a dangerous affair altogether to silence people. And while I'm talking about this, I would like to refer everybody, and probably most people here have read it, to a letter which I will post in the chat window, a letter written by people, by Jews of Israeli origin and others, but mostly Jews of Israeli origin, who are academics, practicing academics in Britain. And they addressed their letter to British universities to oppose the adoption of the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. And I am posting it right now. So please use it as a reference, because it has a lot of links as well. The letter itself online has a lot of links to various documents, and it's an extremely useful reference letter to British universities to reject the adoption of the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. And in case I run out of time, I would like to put my point of view about the debate about silencing critics and whether the principle of free speech should be an absolute or restrictive type of definition. Listening to Norman Finkelstein, I would say that I fully agree with Norman here. I think he is right. I think we should not fear opposite opinions, including those of races, including those even of fascists. And I don't say that lightly. And we should not confuse periods of civil war where people want to defend themselves against neo-Nazis or fascists and go on and stand behind the barricades. This is a different type of debate. We are not talking here about people being prepared to go and defend themselves, defend minorities by force if necessary. It becomes a war of self-defense. This is a different debate from the question of engaging in debate and opposing other views. I think there is no principle which is absolute or is absolutely right 100%. Even if you leave 99.99%, there is still a bit of doubt. And that bit of doubt allows for room for debate, for challenging opinions. The weapon of censorship, the weapon of silencing people and critics has been traditionally the weapon of the ruling classes, the weapon of the oppressors, the weapon of people who killed and wiped out minorities. Whether those minorities were in the Middle Ages who believed in the scientific method or actual ethnic or other minorities. It has been a weapon to silence critics by the right wing, by ruling classes. And the left traditionally must uphold. If they don't uphold the principle of free speech, then they are conceding ground. They are conceding ground in principle to opinions that suggest that other opinions should be silenced. No, we should not be frightened. There is a difference between manning barricades in civil war and engaging in debate like a situation today in Britain. If minorities are attacked by fascists physically, then obviously we should all encourage that minority to defend itself, and we go in solidarity to defend them against any fascist aggression or use of violence against them. Calls for self-defense is nothing to do with the debate against fascism, the principles that they advocate, the racist ideologies that they might advocate. And Norman is right. We should not start debating who should we silence. Who is the real fascist? Who is the half fascist? Who is the fascist who is prepared to hold a gun and kill somebody else? And who is advocating neo-fascism? Is Nigel Farage a fascist who should be silenced? Or is he a right-wing nutter? Or there are a lot of issues involved in terms of trying to decide who to not platform, unplatform, or silence. So therefore, I think we should be careful there. The left has should have the courage of its convictions, argue its point of view. There is no point of view which is absolutely 100% right. There is no such thing. Science hasn't come up with it yet. So we need to engage, we need to be brave in our opinions, and truth will come out. Truth comes out through practice. Truth comes out through being absolutely materialistic and objective and refer to the evidence and so on. And this is the way to defeat right-wing fascism and racism, and not by trying to shut down debate. We will be that much stronger. And I appeal to the elected steering committee when it gets elected to look at that issue more carefully, so that we are not immediately accused of shutting down debate. And
Sammy, could you wind up now?
I am exactly winding up. That was my last sentence in a way, that we should go forward, and this campaign is extremely important. Uphold the right to free speech and withstand the pressures that are piling up against people who speak out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sammy. And my apologies for curtailing, but we are push for time. Okay, comrades, we're now going to move to motions. And the first one is submitted by Tina Werkman, and it's called Campaigning Priorities. I think we should be able to see those up on the screen, if that's possible.
Yes, just a second. Where is it? Okay. Yeah, okay, comrades, this is, oops, you can't even see me. Oh, sorry. Almost there. Okay, this is what I won't take long to move this. It's just, we've discussed a little bit what such a campaign should do, what the immediate aims of the campaign should do, where we should focus our strategies, etc. Seeking affiliations of trade unions, Labour Party branches, CLPs, seek well-known sponsors and patrons for the campaign. I think Norman Finkelstein has already agreed because we've asked him. So if we agree to do this, that would be a very good idea to get some comrades of standing involved. Carry on with Zoom meetings. I think the lockdown will continue for some time. Also stressing, as we have, the international character of the witch hunt and the efforts to restrict free speech. And that would particularly look at the IRA misdefinition of anti-Semitism. And Jamie has agreed to help us out with this. He's too busy to join the steering committee, but he's definitely got expert knowledge on this. And of course, prepare model motions, public statements, etc., etc. This is far from exhaustive, this list. It's an attempt to, give some guidance to the steering committee how to move forward, first of all, but there's tons of other things we can and should do. So this is just one thing to take us forward to. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Tina. Tony Greenstein now on the EHRC definition.
Oop, where is he? Oh, Tony. Oh, I'm not sure I can. Oh, hold on. Sorry, comrades, this is all. Okay, ask to unmute. Tony, are you here?
Here.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, off you go, Tony.
Yeah, I don't think I need to spend a lot of time on it. I'm advocating that we reject the EHRC report in toto, not because we disagree with everything in it, that much of it is quite benign, such as the right of someone who is suspended to know who their accusers are, for example. That is not the point. What we should do is reject the idea that the EHRC had any right to conduct an investigation into the Labour Party in the first place. The EHRC is not an anti-racist or an anti-sexist or any other body. It's a state body nominated, its members, its commissioners are nominated and put there by the Conservatives, and they're now putting people in as commissioners who support the hostile environment policy. So they're not even anti-racist. And as I said, Alistair Henderson, who oversaw the commission, the report into the Labour Party, tweeted and on Facebook, rather, he gave likes to, sorry, it was on Twitter, he gave likes to people like Roger Scruton, for example, an out-and-out fascist who edited the Salisbury Review. So it's an utter and total absurdity. The HRC is a state body, and we reject state interference in political parties. And of course, it's no accident that Keir Starmer has outlawed any discussion of the report because it's so nebulous, it's so thin. It defines harassment, which it applies to an individual normally, possibly a group, in terms of political speech. If you disagree with the fact that Labour has an anti-Semitism problem, then that is harassment. That's absurd. You would then define any political speech as harassment. The Equality Act was quite specific as to what harassment was. In essence, though the report, those who drew up the report reached their conclusions and then looked around for the evidence. And they, in the end, targeted two people, Pam Bromley, and Ken Livingstone. And Ken Livingstone's offence was actually speaking about something that was historically correct. So I don't think this will be controversial, but we should reject the report in toto and reject the right of the HRC to investigate the Labour Party in any case. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Tony. Okay, the next comrade who's moved a motion is Steve Freeman on WikiLeaks.
I think it's actually Deepa who's moving this.
Oh, okay.
A driver.
Thank you. And thank you to Steve who moved the motion. I apologize for the background noise. I've got a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old running about. Firstly, the case of Julian Assange is not just about Julian Assange. It's about the right of us as activists to campaign about the crimes that imperialist governments commit in our name. It's also about holding power to account. The case of Julian Assange is also one where, like in the case of Jeremy Corbyn, like in the case of many others, positive ideals have been weaponized towards negative ends without a necessary commitment to those positive ideals. And the amount of propaganda has prevented debate of the issue, which is essentially nation states ganging up to suppress free speech. I would therefore urge this conference to support Julian Assange and make sure that he is freed, not just not extradited, but actually freed. This is a man who is currently in solitary confinement, in effect, because Belmarsh is locked down. Over the years, he has suffered a huge amount of physical and emotional anguish, which the UN Special Rapporteur, Professor Niels Melzer, and the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention have clearly categorized as torture and arbitrary detention. In addition, we are in a situation where he has lost some of his peripheral vision. The judge talked about his mental health issues, but this is not a case of mental health which is related to his personal disposition. It is about 5 states stamping on his head and causing him to undergo the kind of degradation and pain that he suffers now, including injuries which have not been treated, including him cracking a rib because he bent over to tie a shoelace because of osteoporosis as a result of being confined in the embassy. And the state continues to prevent legal observer at the trial. I can tell you that, I won't go into the detail of the legal observation because my report will come through formally, but all I can tell you is I was denied access to the trial. It was made very difficult for the public to attend his trial. And most people on the left still don't understand what the trial is about, which means we start talking about a range of other things and start talking about Julian's personality rather than about the issues at stake. So I'd urge you to support this motion, and I'm grateful to all the comrades who've sent messages of support in the chat and to Steve for bringing through this motion. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Deepa. The next motion is called Labour Party Rights, and it's being moved by Tina Werkman.
Me again, sorry, comrades. It's actually Tony and I have drawn this up together. It's we just thought it would be useful to not just discuss what free speech means, but also in the context, of course, of the attacks on Labour Party members in particular and their rights, because many of us, well, we were in the Labour Party or still hanging on, etc. This is also, I think, it could be a useful PR tool. So if you build a truly democratic organization, what are the kind of rights members should have? And you read through and it all seems quite obvious and nonsensical to even mention it, but all these things that we're mentioning there have, of course, been under attack. We've also put in the anti-Semitism advisory panel because the membership of that has just come out in the last few days, and that is, if it wasn't so funny, well, if it wasn't so sad, actually, you'd have to laugh about it because it's full of one particular viewpoint, a pro-Zionist viewpoint in the Labour Party. And there's obviously, it's not even in the Labour Party. There are people on it that are not in the Labour Party, but quite hostile to it. And they are now judging, anti-Semitism allegations in the Labour Party is just, it's an absolute joke, actually. So this is, like I say, an attempt to positively formulate what kind of rights members should have in a Labour Party, and it's actually, it goes beyond, of course, any democratic organisation should have. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Tina. This is a bit like the Tony and Tina show, because it's now Tony moving a motion on liberty.
Okay, thank you. Do you want me to speak now? Yes?
Yes, please, Tony.
Yes, okay. The National Council for Civil Liberties, which is now called Liberty, was formed in 1934 as a result of police attacks on the right to peacefully protest. It's had quite a long and honourable history in defending civil liberties in this country, including the right to freedom of speech. It's quite amazing that despite the fact that in the 2017 conference, Professor Jonathan Rosenhead of the Jewish Voice for Labour successfully moved a motion opposing the IHRA with only a handful of people against it, the officers and staff of Liberty have adamantly refused to do anything about it, including the outrageous attack on universities' autonomy this year by Gavin Henderson, the most incompetent and malevolent Tory minister of all, threatening the funding of universities if they did not adopt the IHRA. He's not interested in any other form of racism, you understand, not surprisingly, given the record of his own party. But the IHRA had to be implemented. And we all know what the IHRA is about, and it's not about anti-Semitism. You would therefore have expected Liberty to take it on board to oppose what Gavin Williamson is doing in foisting or trying to foist the IHRA on universities. Namely, he's trying to get universities to police free speech on Palestine and on Zionism. That is so abundantly clear, it needs really no argumentation. But Liberty has been silent, it said nothing. And the reason for that is clearly the New Labour politics of many of those who actually lead the organisation. And I'm saying this should be one of our priorities, is to get Liberty off the fence. If you think of it in America, where they've been using the IHRA and trying to make BDS in essence illegal, the Liberty's sister organisation, the American Civil Liberties Union, has been extremely active, including funding legal challenges under the First Amendment to anyone who tries to penalise someone for supporting BDS. Liberty in this country has shamefully maintained absolute radio silence. So I think, not only should people join Liberty to change it, but the organisations should speak out about it and put Liberty on the spot. Where do you stand? Why have you done nothing? What are you going to do? Do you not think academic freedom is important in a civil society? If not, please explain why. So I'm sure that no one will want to oppose this motion, and I therefore move it. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. The next motion is moved by Mark El-Kadi, and it's on non-Labour news. Mark El-Kadi.
I don't think he's in the meeting, so.
Okay, well, the motion falls.
Yep.
Okay, the next one is entitled Democracy Quilt, and it's moved by Nicola Grove.
Yes, hello, comrades, and thank you. Tina, could you possibly take the screen share off, because I've got something I want to show. Okay, so very quickly, I'm a 72-year-old grandmother. I'm a member of South Wilts CLP, which is one of those affected by having passed a motion in support of Jeremy Corbyn. We're proposing, I'm working with 3 women. I have to say I'm not active on social media. I have tried publicising this and it's been rubbish. So I'm incredibly grateful to you for giving me a little bit of space to say, is this something you would like to take on? So briefly, the proposal is, it's a project called See Red So Loud. And it's in the tradition of artwork and storytelling. that looks at quilting as a form of resistance. So that's very well known in women's history and in that of Indigenous people. Our idea is for initially a digital quilt, which would commemorate what is going on in the Labour Party at the moment. And eventually we would turn that into an actual quilt, which could have a life, an eternal life, hopefully, in somewhere like the People's Museum. Okay, why is this important? Why should you support this, and in what way? Well, I think the idea for an art project actually addresses 4 issues that I'm experiencing at the moment. The first one is demoralization and depression. And if I feel enraged and despairing, I cannot imagine what those of you who are directly affected by this feel like. This idea came to me because I spent my time just agonizing, waking up in the night, unable to sleep. And then I thought of doing something creative and active in a way that would be beautiful and funny. I mean, Tina talked about it being a joke. It is a joke, comrades, and I'm going to show you a joke in a minute. Secondly, I think that there is a lot of fragmentation. So what we've got is a lot of different organizations, different rallies, different events happening. Whereas if we can create a space which will visually bring everything together, then that is incredibly unifying and creative and motivating. The third issue is that I think there is a real concern for me as a woman, and I work with people with learning disabilities, so perhaps I'm terribly aware of this, that so far much of the discussion, or all of it really, has been what I would call really head stuff. So it's very cognitive, it's rallies, it's writing, it's speeches. And what we need is visual art symbols that speak to the heart and are going to transcend and make an impact online and in reality. Because make no mistake, if we don't memorialize history, then we are condemned to repeat it. And what we want is powerful, striking images that will commemorate what is the worst attack on democracy in my lifetime. And as I say, I'm 72 and I've been active in the Labour Party most of my life. So what would it look like? Okay, so it'll be digital and it could be anything. So it's words, it's images, it's photographs. What we hope is that all organizations and CLPs that are affected will contribute something. Here's what I've just made, okay? This is South Wilts CLP, and what you can see is the Westbury White Horse enraged out of its normal torpor by what is happening to its councillors and its local Labour Party. And our White Horse is saying, nay. All right, it's not a terribly good joke, but I was rather pleased with it. So, what am I suggesting? Well, it may be that maybe this is just too narrow for you. I don't know, but you could either adopt it and they provide a page on the website for publicity. We urgently need people to be sending us stuff, and we need a little organizing committee because I can't do this all on my own. The way forward is to email us, and I put the link in the chat if you want to contribute an image. If you can provide a page on the website, that would be absolutely fantastic. If not, just publicizing it and helping us set up an organizing committee so that we can get this moving, so that we can create powerful, creative, funny images that are going to capture the imagination and energize us all. Thank you very much, comrades.
Okay, thank you, Nicola. Okay, comrades, we've now got some time for discussion. I can see 2 hands raised, so if comrades would like to unmute. Chris Williamson, first one.
It was only a brief. Oh, hang on, yes, I am plugged in. No, it was only a brief point. I've made the point in the chat now. Really, it was just in relation to Tony's motion, which I support. It's just a matter of accuracy, really. On the point 5, clause 5, there were actually 6 people who were targeted by the EHRC, not just 3. And following the legal representations that I made, they dropped the cases from not just myself, but 3 others, leaving just Pam and Ken. It was just a minor point, really, but I made it in the chat, but I've made it orally now as well. So that was it.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Anita Bennett.
Oh, sorry, no, Terry was first, I think.
Okay, sorry, Terry.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Comrades, thank you very much for this very, very good conference. I put in a motion to my branch the other evening in solidarity with Labour Black Socialists because of their deep feeling of being sidelined in the whole question in the Labour Party. It fell because it's 5-5, but what I experienced was exactly and precisely how hard it is for BAME members in the Labour Party to have their voice heard. Not even that they're going to be censored, but to be even heard. It fell because the objections to the term hierarchy, and so people accused of being anti-Semitic. But I don't think that was the sole reason. I think it was because the Labour Party would like to see Black anti-racists as being tamed. If you raise your voice in anger, and rightly so, considering what's happened to our Black MPs, and we now know that the Ford inquiry is being totally demolished, they are incredibly angry. And why not? But they're being tamed. And that's what I experienced in putting forward the motion, that I was actually tamed, that I didn't behave in the way that we need to behave. So comrades, I feel that what we haven't really addressed in this conference is our solidarity with Black and BAME members in their struggle in the Labour Party against racism, which is very active.
Okay, thanks, Terry. The next comrade, Anita Bennett. You're muted, Anita.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Go, fire away.
Well, I think that the idea for having a quilt is absolutely brilliant. And I just wanted to say, urge people to have a look at the Bristol campaign for Save the M32 Maples, which Esther and I have been very active in, partly because it's a bit difficult being active in some of the shenanigans that are going on in the party. Various advantages to that. One is that it gets us involved in action, you know, particularly at this time. So it's great building tree houses. Some of us have chained ourselves to some trees. We've given Marvin a really bad time over his favoring developers over trees, and we reach young people and we work with young people. And I really, really urge you, people who say, oh, I don't do social media, just try it. I've got a daughter with Down syndrome. You know, she goes on Facebook, she loves it. And we need to get through to people where they are and get young people, because one of the reasons for this free speech debate is that they're miseducated and they need to have action and they need to have us engage with them where they're at. They see us, they are Generation Rent. And we are baby boomers, many of us, and we need to, the green issue, the trees is a really, really big thing. I know it may sound a little bit far out to everybody, but it certainly isn't in terms, because it's Labour women in Ashley Ward right now who are kicking it up. And just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Anita. Steve Freeman, next comrade up. If any further comrades want to join in the discussion, please use the raise hands function.
I won't repeat the thank you, Kevin. I won't repeat the arguments we've already discussed and are supported. I want to make one small point about Julian Assange. It's very, very important. Obviously, there are many, many examples of attacks on free speech, but I think we've got to make sure we give this particular case a high priority. We've seen that some people have been sacked, some people have been expelled, but this man is in prison. He's a political prisoner who's committed no crime, because what he's done is he's made public the truth about what's been going on. Now, these points are already made and accepted by everybody.
We turn off whoever's.
Yeah.
Carry on.
We have the case. We have obviously another very important case in Chelsea Manning. But the point is about Julian Assange. He's in our prison in this country. Therefore, we have a special duty to do everything we can in the working class and labour and trade union movement to help put pressure to get this man out of jail. He should be released immediately. I'll stop there because I'm otherwise repeating myself.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Steve. Charlotte Peters-Rock, I think.
Kevin, you've overlooked Amina, who's
No, I haven't overlooked her. Right, Charlotte was on.
Charlotte.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tina, can you turn whoever it is off?
Yes, I think that was Amina.
Okay, can I call in Charlotte now, please, and then I'll call in Amina.
Charlotte, we can't hear you.
Could you unmute, please, Charlotte?
That's better.
Is that okay?
No, yeah, it's okay now, yeah.
It's these that are doing it then. Sorry, I couldn't hear somebody previously. You can hear me now?
Yes.
Right. What I wanted to say was that what we're missing in this country, and we've been missing for a long time, is any form of public debate. What's just happening here now, and has been happening for the last hour or two, is just magnificent. And what we need is to get this out in a public arena where the people who disagree can turn up and disagree. This doesn't happen anymore. All we have is an insult from one side, an insult from the other side. And I just wanted to throw that into the mix with everything else. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Charlotte. And then Amina, please, now.
Hi, can anybody hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Amina.
Okay, yeah, the subject here is building the campaign for freedom of speech, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So can you please tell me why you lie constantly and delegitimize Israel?
Because it's a racist state.
Just let
it's not a racist state. In fact, Tony Greenstein, you have been in
doesn't even supply vaccines.
Tony, please let the
Israel is not a racist state. It's not even an apartheid state. So why do you keep delegitimizing Israel? That's my question to you.
B'Tselem, who know more about it than you.
No, B'Tselem are an NGO that's funded by Iran. Carry on. I'm asking the question.
Carry on with your contribution.
Why does Chris Williamson, who sits there all glorified, yeah, why does he delegitimize Israel?
Does it itself? You don't need to.
There is no apartheid in Israel. You know that, and I know that.
I don't know that. Would you just knows it, and it's all
the anti-Israel organisations are a pyramid-selling scheme. You know that, and I know that. You're having a good living off of Israel, aren't you, Tony Greenstein? Making a good living off the hatred of Israel. Is that right?
You really have nothing to say.
I have nothing to say. You shouldn't even be on.
Okay, I think that's enough.
Okay, next comrade, please, that wants to speak.
If there's nobody else, maybe we should go to the vote, or if there's a need for right of reply.
Okay, would...
we have two people wanting to speak now, Jackie Walker and John Bridge.
Okay, call in Jackie, please.
Hi, I'm sorry I haven't been able to take full part. I haven't actually been feeling very well today, but I want to say how important I think this debate is. It's absolutely crucial. It's even crucial that we people like Amina spout, and I do think we should have let her spout even more of the gibberish that she was spouting, because I think it's important in a way to refer to what Norman Finkelstein said, that we need to know what is being said in these things. I love the idea of the quilt, and I actually think this project, this theme is becoming increasingly the core issue that we have to go ahead with. It's not about whether people agree or not. It's finding forums that allow people to disagree and to debate. Because one of the huge bits of damage that has been done to the left, and in some ways by the left, is this censoring of people, this no platforming. And just to end, just to say this, to me, it's a sign. It's actually a sign of the damage that has been done to the left, that we now see people who claim to be on the left actually no platforming other socialists. This is not something that we should be doing. So I just want to make it absolutely plain that although I haven't been able to take as full a part as I have wanted to today, I strongly, strongly am behind this as an issue and as a campaign. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jackie. John Bridge.
Yeah, my camera is muted or whatever. Oh, here we are. Thanks. Start my video. Thanks. Here I am. Yeah, I was almost going to say exactly the same as Jackie, and maybe I'm taking up time, but yeah, I mean, to me, the last but one speaker really shows you, one, what we're up against, but also how easily, you know, we can defeat such nonsense. So I think we do need confidence. I think we do need to stand for freedom of speech. I know we've got a steering committee that will sort this out, but I do think it needs sorting out. You know, are we a freedom of speech campaign, or are we a freedom of speech campaign but?
Okay, thanks, John. Are there any further comrades who want to come in at all? Okay.
Oh, Anand would like to speak. I think he's not managed.
Okay, I can't see him on the panel, but if you can.
Anand, okay, I'm trying to find you. Mute. Okay. Anand, I've asked you to unmute. You need to unmute yourself if you want to speak. There should be a message on your screen. I don't think they're coming right. Okay. Stan Keeble is trying to speak. Stan?
Yeah, just struggling with the button again.
Oh, there you go.
No, I just wanted to say, I think we go ahead with all of the motions need a positive vote. There's no real problem with any of them. You could perfect something, but it's fine. So vote for the motions. Let's not worry about that. We do need a good discussion to be organised on the question that where we voted through contradictory positions. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Stan. Victor Logan has his hand up.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Victor.
Excellent. In that case, I'll jump in and save time. Freedom of speech is precious. To me, it's sacrosanct. Dictatorships like the Nazi one, like Stalin, war criminals like Tony Blair spring up when freedom of speech is crushed. You start off by saying you're giving no freedom of speech to fascists. So you ban Oswald Mosley. Then you ban the National Front. Then you ban the BNP. Then you physically attack Mr. Farage when he's standing for Parliament in Kent. And it ends up with people like us being fitted up as anti-Semites. As such, we're then no platformed. We don't even get a fair trial to put our case. We certainly don't get allowed to put our case because we're no platformed, and you don't allow anti-Semites to speak. And eventually it ends into an awful kangaroo court, an awful one-party system with only one view allowed because you find that once everyone else's opinions are banned, they eventually come for you. We've got to avoid that slippery slope. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Victor. I don't see any further hands raised.
Anand is now unmuted, so he can speak. But he doesn't have the camera on, but he can just speak.
Okay, fine. So, comrade, if you want to come in now, Anand.
Yeah, I have a question for everyone. What are your thoughts on the Palestinian Authority? Sometimes it's referred to as PA. What are your thoughts on the Palestinian Authority's NSF, or National Security Force?
Okay, that's a comment. If anybody wants to come in, the floor is still open. We've still got.
Well,
yeah.
I could answer it very briefly if you want.
Okay, Tony, if you want to come in and stick to the 3 minutes.
Well, yes, I mean, the Palestinian Authority, which was a creation of the Oslo Accords, was given a task by Israel, which is to police the Palestinians. And they do that. They work very closely with the Israeli security forces. So in my view, the Palestinian Authority is a quisling authority. It's there to act on behalf of imperialism and Israel in particular, and we should have nothing to do with it, and we should give it no support. On their declaration that Palestine is now an independent state is a total absurdity. But it's interesting that in the Jewish Chronicle, when justifying the refusal to give vaccines to the Palestinians, the particular writer, Seth Brantzman from the Jerusalem Post, said, well, Palestine is recognized by 139 states in the world, forgetting to mention that, of course, Israel was not amongst them. So it's quite a dangerous idea to pretend that Palestine is already independent. It's not. The PA is not a government, but Israel pretends it is a Palestinian government when it suits it, when it's using it to deny Palestinians the most basic rights under an occupation, according to the Geneva Convention, Part 4. So I think we should have no truck with it whatsoever. It's a completely reactionary body, which is there to do the dirty work of Israel. In essence, it's there to collect the garbage and to clean the streets, whilst Israel maintains the security and the occupation. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Tony. There are no more hands up, so I'm now going to just move to if any comrades want to do a very brief summing up, otherwise I'll call the vote. Would any of the movers like to sum up at all?
No.
No, it's
okay.
Just formally, everyone.
Yes, formally.
Okay. Right, comrades, I'm going to move to the vote. There'll be the I think, Tina, we're using the
poll that's on your screen. Poll. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The first motion then, campaigning priorities, motion 2.1. Can I see all those?
No, Kevin, there's a Zoom poll on the screen because the hand doesn't work for everybody.
Okay.
I've launched a poll that everybody should be able to see on all the motions.
It hasn't.
It makes it easier. I think everybody can see it, but people are voting.
I can't see the poll.
It's because possibly because you're a co-host, you can't vote anyway.
Okay.
Me, Tony, and Kevin, we're all, can't vote. If anything gets a close vote, we can vote.
Okay. So, Tina, can you just tell me, are all the motions up on the panel? Oh, I see.
In the poll, yeah. They're all in order.
I see them now, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, comrades, can I see, please, your votes? I'll just give you a few moments to do that. Comrades, sorry, Ashley, did you have a point on the conduct of the vote?
What's this?
Ashley Reed, I think, put his hand up. Just seen it on the participants box.
Oh, comrades are saying they can't submit. I can see how you're voting, though. I can't see how you're voting, but I can see, comrades, the vote is working. So there might be an issue with the not submitting one, but 62% are voting. Okay, somebody says scroll down. We're now voting on the motions that have just been moved by comrades. If you are unsure which motion we're voting on, check it in your running order. I'll put it again into the, so some comrades are saying scroll down of the poll and then you should be able to submit it, but I think even if you're not submitting it, we can still see it. Okay, somebody says the submit button doesn't come up if you miss one question, so please do vote abstain or yes or no on all those motions. Okay, I think everybody's voted. 112 people have voted, 113. So I'm suggesting I'm going to stop the poll now.
Yeah, okay. I couldn't.
I'm sharing the results here.
Okay, the votes in favour were 97% in favour of the campaigning priorities, with none against, 3% abstained. Opposition to the EHRC, that was 95% in favour, 1% against, and 4% abstentions. On the WikiLeaks issue, that was 98% in favour, 1% against, and 1% abstentions. On Labour Party rights, that was 97%, no opposition with 3 abstentions. On liberty, that was 95% in favour, 1% against, and 4% abstentions. And on the democracy quilt, 93% in favour, no opposition, and 7% abstentions. So thanks very much, comrades, for those that unanimity. I think pretty close to that in many areas. A lot there for the new steering committee to get into, I think, there. Okay, so we now move on to the elections to the steering committee, and we've had a number of nominations which have come in on the chat. Tina, is it possible for you to share those lists of nominations?
I have been sharing it in the chat a few times, but perhaps we could quickly go through them all. I've tried to email Norman and see if he's accepting the nomination, but we should ask all those who've been nominated if they accept the nominations.
Okay, it's now up in the chat.
Oh, I've missed Jackie Walker off, but we have to. Yes, sorry.
Okay.
She was on my list.
Okay, just while we're doing that, John Bridge has got a hand up. Is this on the conduct of the nominations, John?
Yeah, I must reluctantly decline the nomination. Thanks for nominating me, whoever it was, comrade.
Okay, thanks, John. So that means
Sami's got his hand up as well.
Okay.
Oop. Sorry, comrade, I've muted you again. Sorry.
Okay, thanks. Just to say that thanks a lot for nominating me. Unfortunately, time is of the essence. I'm a member of so many different committees and so on, and I feel that I'll let you down if I do become a member of the steering committee. But thank you for the confidence, and rest assured that I will support your campaign wholeheartedly without any reservations. And I think there are some brilliant, well, everybody standing seems to have contributed brilliantly. And I wish you luck, and I will continue supporting the campaign completely, and whenever time allows, I'll come and join you. Thanks a lot.
Hi, comrades. Thank you. Again, I feel exactly the same as Sammy. I feel immensely touched that anybody would have nominated me. It's not something that I have the time to be able to do well, which is what I would want to be able to do. But if you're adopting the idea of the art project and the digital quilt, I will, of course, be coordinating that and work with the steering committee on that. Thank you very much.
Cool, great. Thank you, Nicola. Okay, we've still got 12 nominations, which is a bit too many. We're just going to go through quickly all the nominations, if that's okay, and see who's even willing to stand or who doesn't want to stand. Okay, there, I put them in there. Okay, Kevin had problems with his computer and has just been checked out of the meeting, which is why I've taken over now, but he's confirmed he's interested in serving on the committee. Tony Greenstein, I believe, is interested in serving on the committee. Can you just say yes quickly?
Yep.
Then there's myself. Yes, I'm happy as well. Chris Williamson. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to scroll through and unmute, comrades. Chris, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Yeah, I'm fine with that nomination. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, Jackie Walker's been nominated. I know you're poorly. Can you hear us, Jackie? Are you still in the meeting?
Yeah, I'm here.
Are you happy to accept the nomination?
Yes.
Yes. And with such conviction. Thank you, comrade. Okay. I've now lost my chat window. Just a second. I can't see my own list. Norman Finkelstein is not in the meeting anymore. He did suggest previously, when I asked him about this, actually, that he would be better perhaps as a patron. So I suggest we accept this suggestion of his and he becomes a patron.
Yeah, that's a very good idea.
I've also just emailed him, but he's not replied yet. But maybe perhaps I would suggest if he does reply positively to the email, we can co-opt him onto the steering committee. But I'm not sure. I think he said no at the time. Esther. Esther Giles?
Yes, I'd be honoured if people would like that. Yeah.
Excellent. Anita seems to have left the meeting. Anita Bennett. I'm not sure we can. Does anybody, if anybody knows her and got her number or something to ask her, that would be good. Deepa is also, she was on the road, and Deepa Driver was on the road and was busy, but she has confirmed to me that she's interested in standing. I'm going to take Stan and, John Courtnidge has nominated himself. I'll get back to you, comrade. So I'll take that as a yes. Stan Keeble has been nominated. Are you interested in standing for the steering committee, Stan?
No, thanks for nominating me, but no, I'm already too busy by half.
Okay, doke. Okay, Terry Deans has been nominated. Terry, are you there? Can you hear us? If so, can you just say yes or no? Oh, Anita said yes in the chat. Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. Terry Deans. Okay, I've asked him to unmute himself. I presume he's not on the, or not in the meeting at the moment. Okay, what do we do about that?
Well, can I make a proposal? We have 11 people instead of 9. I suggest we adopt them all.
It's 10 actually, yes.
10.
But,
okay,
yeah.
It's even more. I don't think we really want to get into a vote as to.
No, yeah, quite right. Okay, so these are the 10 people who have been nominated. John is on there. Terry, I can't get hold of Terry. If he's not keen, then we have 9 people as we initially agreed. So
yeah,
not a problem at all. Okay, John, I think is perhaps the only person we haven't heard from.
John.
So perhaps John, we initially suggested that all committee members or the candidates make a short speech, but I think we've all been in the meeting today and you've heard plenty of us, and we're running almost a bit late. So I think John is the only person we haven't heard from Courtnidge. So I would ask you to speak briefly, 2 minutes if you could. Hello, John. Oh, sorry, you're still muted somehow. I've unmuted you, but we can't hear you.
My bottom screen menu says that I'm not muted.
We can hear you now. Thank you.
Good. Okay, let me sweep across so I can see myself speaking. So first of all, my thanks to Victor Logan for nominating me, and to the group members for listening to me briefly. I was the Labour candidate for the Bromley Chislehurst constituency in 2015, and then was fiddled away from that in 2017. I was the chair of the Bromley Cooperative Party and have been externalised to Littlehampton. That happened in May 2019. I can explain why. I'm an executive member of Labour Action for Peace and was expelled along with 24 other members on 10th of February 2020, having been told a year before that I would receive a hearing. As you know, the rules were changed. I have contacted the Cooperative Party, and to cut a long story short, I've been expelled from the Cooperative Party for a year. So I bring that experience to the table. As I say, I'm an executive member of Labour Action for Peace, and one of the things that I might suggest is that we look at a calendar of events for the 12 months, certainly thinking about recognising the expulsion of those 24 and others that were expelled beforehand, and perhaps have a joint meeting with Labour Action for Peace. We've instituted in November a Labour Action for Peace lecture in the House of Commons in the committee rooms, which various members have supported, MP members and members of Labour Action for Peace, because this is a time when we should be defending democracy, including free speech, but defending democracy and making sure that all voices are heard and considered in our debates. That's what democracy requires of us. As I say, I'm a Quaker, a grandfather, and I now am retired. I'll be 70 at the end of this month. I live in Littlehampton. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, comrade. Okay. Does anybody have any questions for any of the candidates? And please click raise hand. Okay, Marie has a question. Fire away.
Yes, I would like to ask John Courtnidge, what does the Labour Party for Peace, is that the right name? In what way is it relating to Stop the War and CND and all that sort of thing? Could you comment on this, please?
Happily, yes. Labour Action for Peace was established about 50 years ago. Some comrades will remember the names of Ron and Rosalie Hazard as long-time members. Colin Bastin is the current chair. Our friend and comrade Walter Wolfgang was very active in Labour CND and CND, and at Labour Party conferences we always, as Labour Action for Peace, have a joint meeting, a fringe meeting with CND. So that's the closeness of our relationship. I would say that Labour Action for Peace has a broader remit than CND. since we speak about complete disarmament and a world of peace and socialism. And Labour Action for Peace was the first organisation to adopt a plan for cooperative socialism, which I laid on the table about 8 or 9, not quite 10 years ago. And Frank Jackson, as a fellow member of all of those organisations, and the rest of the executive, were all instantly happy to adopt that plan for cooperative socialism. I hope that's a helpful response. If I haven't made that clear, please ask again.
Marie, ask another question. Go on quickly. Marie, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, sorry, I don't mean to be personal, but I rather object to the perspective that you have outlined, because disarming everybody means that as long as those who are, it's making an equidistance, an equivalence between those who attack and those who defend themselves. And I don't think this is right. I think that we should be on the side of those who fight for progress and for socialism, and not just disarm everybody. I don't think this is correct.
I don't think this is really the place to debate those issues.
No, I think we, it's an opinion that we might debate elsewhere, but you know, I think on a steering committee for a campaign for free speech, that's entirely appropriate to have different viewpoints on those issues. So Tony suggested we don't vote because we have 10 candidates for 9 positions. So that's you know, we just have 10 people on it. I've just heard back from Norman, who says thank you very much for the nomination, but he thinks he should be part of the UK left in order to properly be able to intervene, etc. So, but he's very happy to support us as a patron and to come to meetings, etc., which is fantastic. Okay. Well, who would have thought that we finish more or less on time? It's been an excellent day, really. I think it's been fantastic. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating and for staying. I mean, we've shed a few people on the way. We've had over 300 people in the meeting in a working conference, which is fantastic, and that's something I think we could be very, very proud about. I'm hoping to work, looking forward to working together with the other comrades on the steering committee. I believe I have all your contacts. John, perhaps you're the only person who I don't know personally. If you could send an email to Labour Against the Witch Hunt, info@Labour Against the Witch Hunt. I think alternatively I could get it from the Zoom registration link. But thank you very much, comrades. It's been, I think, a great education. It's also been quite entertaining in parts. It's a very important campaign that we take forward together, and it's been an honor to be in the same meeting with you. I'm trying to unmute everybody so you can all chat or something, but don't overdo it. Apologies for having to switch you off during the meeting, but it would have been a mayhem otherwise. So thank you very much, comrades, and we look forward together. Thank you very much.
Well done, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Thank you. Excellent meeting. Well done, everybody. Bye.
Thank you so much. That was an excellent afternoon.
Well done, everybody. Julian Assange.
That's right.
Bye. Solidarity. Julian Assange.
Yeah.
No